Greetings. My name is Dr. YasmeenNkrumah-Elie, and I am the director for the ChromaDex External Research Program, also known as CERP. It has been an honor and a privilege to serve in this capacity, and we are now celebrating our 10th anniversary. To celebrate, we want to share more about our program with everyone. ChromaDex is unique, it is trailblazing, and it is truly a program that's exemplary for our entire industry. Through CERP, we have developed 275 material transfer agreements and counting that we have researchers studying our patented ingredient, Niagen, nicotinamide riboside, as well as a few other of our ChromaDex compounds that are primarily involved in advancing the science of nicotinamide adenine dinucleotide. I know that is a mouthful, but NAD is essential to our cells and has become such an important component of research. As a part of our celebration, we have decided to highlight several of our CERP investigators, which we affectionately call CERPies, to share more about the research and the advancement of the science of NAD. Through this whole series, we are going to be talking to investigators that have studied the basic science, to those who are studying the clinical research and continuing to translate that work that was seen in the basic science into humans. To start off, we're going to first actually learn more about how CERP was started. And who better than to talk to than our former CEO and co-founder of ChromaDex, Frank Jaksch. My colleague, Kendall Knish, and I will be interviewing Frank and learning more about how did CERP start, why is it important, and why should consumers care about this research? Thanks for listening in.
Tell us a little bit more about yourself and your relationship to ChromaDex.
So I'm the co-founder of ChromaDex. So I started the company back in late 1999. And then I led the sort of the development of what became ChromaDex today, which is, as you guys know, gone through quite an interesting path to get to where we got to. But so I led the company as the CEO since it was founded, and a few years ago, when the company was moving more towards being a consumer product company, that's when I stepped down as the CEO, stayed on as executive chairman of ChromaDex. And then Rob Fried took over as the CEO. And I've since now moved on to a new endeavor, and I'm still the chairman of ChromaDex today, still on the board and chairman, and still excited to continue to contribute as much in any way I can to the future of ChromaDex.
Excellent. Thank you so much.
So you were the visionary for what later became CERP, which started as our MTA program. And so just really curious, why did you start this program? And, how was it actually initiated?
So, ChromaDex had a rather interesting business model in the sense that, we were a natural products chemistry company. So we sold phytochemicals as reference standards, and we also had a service business that we operated that sort of did everything that somebody who didn't have the skills in natural products chemistry to do on their own. They would contract with a company like us to do that work. So ChromaDex became sort of recognized as the expert in natural products chemistry, pretty much all aspects of it, from testing an ingredient to testing finished consumer products, all the way to helping companies find ways of scaling up things to make them in larger scale, and do even all the regulatory work necessary to do that. So we did that whole thing, but we were also, during that process, our model was to sort of be in a sort of unique position because our customers were universities, weren't just large companies, were small companies that were developing food, beverage, or dietary supplement companies, but we also did a lot of business with universities doing early stage research. So we had established reputation with universities all over the world. And they were our customers buying stuff from us, or in some cases using us for services. And along the way, we would find that they had value. They were doing great research, and they were filing patents. And it was a great insight for us to a great lens for us to be able to find valuable ingredients that were sort of new, based on new research from these universities that were put us in a unique position to license that intellectual property. And that's how we found Niagen in the first place. So using that, the idea then was, okay, we're developing all these great ingredients, and we've got these great, we've got this great network of universities that not only we've been licensing intellectual property from and developing a reputation around that. Why shouldn't we leverage that same university set to help us develop these ingredients? Because it still requires a lot of work. I mean, developing a new ingredient is a considerable effort, as you guys both know. And it requires safety, it requires the toxicology work, it requires preclinical and clinical work, which are time-consuming and expensive propositions. And having dealt with the university track for many, many years, it was clear that universities were very motivated to do preclinical and clinical work on something that was new. Mm-hmm. It was in their best interest because they wanted to get in early and they wanted to publish. So what you had to do is match up something that was appealing to them, that they thought that's really cool. We would like to do research on that. And we're willing to do it because we want to do the research and we want to publish on that. But it's not easy. You have to understand they're not going to do it on something that isn't sort of new as well, right? And something that they believe is going to have credibility and appeal to them, that warrants, number one, spending the time, spending the money to do it, and publishing and going through the effort of publishing something. So it has to be a shiny enough object to them, not just something that is a mission, that's a mission, or sort of it's being driven by the company of interest. Because they don't care about what necessarily what our interest is. They care what they think that what it can do, what they're going to be able to see, and what they're going to be able to publish. And if that marries up with the company's interest, that's great, but that's going to be their primary focus. So that was the idea behind CERP.
Yeah, that's pretty awesome. I've heard a story that there was someone who was presenting at a conference, and they shared that they had received our nicotinamide riboside, our Niagen product, and some people from the conference actually ran out of the room to call you to ask them how they could get more about it. So without naming any names, can you share that story with us a little?
So yeah, I mean, that was in 2013. So ChromaDex had been working on developing nicotinamide riboside for years. From the first point that I really found it in, I'll call it 2006, to us becoming sort of actively going, I think we want to do something here in 2008, 2009. And then taking several years to accumulate the intellectual property and finally get to a point where we could make it and launch it. 2013 was an important year because that was the year that we figured out how to make this stuff in metric ton quantities. And we had in June of, I think of 2013, we had formally announced the launch of Niagen, nicotinamide riboside, under the brand Niagen. And then just sort of serendipitously, I guess, the FASB NAD biology conference was happening in July, a month later. And all of a sudden at that conference, somebody started talking about, hey, there's this company that now has, large quantities of nicotinamide riboside. And one of the guys who you said I won't name right now, but it was a very large company and a very prestigious researcher at one of these large companies, who literally in the middle of that conversation walked out and then picked up the phone and made a call to ChromaDex to find a way before anybody else got to jump in front of him. He felt he needed to leave the meeting and make that phone call to make sure that they could throw their hat in the ring and being able to get access to it as quick as possible. So that was pretty interesting.
That's incredible.
Definitely a hot and exciting topic. Go ahead, Kendall.
Oh, I think my computer might be a little delayed.
Okay. So how has CERP, from your perspective, Frank, advanced the science of NAD?
Well, it advances it in many ways because, well, if you think about it, when we launched nicotinamide riboside in 2013, previously before that, I mean, even researchers struggled to be able to get enough material to even do basic research. And because of the limitations of availability of material, there was a lot of interest of researchers that wanted to do research on nicotinamide riboside and NAD precursors, but there was no availability of material. You could only find milligrams of the stuff around. You finding grams of it was very difficult. So that sort of inhibited the ability to do research. So when we came in and now offered it, I gave you that example of the guy leaving the meeting in 2013. It was like all of a sudden the floodgates opened up because now there was availability from this company to do that. So it just made sense and we also knew at the time that there was not a lot of data on nicotinamide riboside. It was a lot, and NAD precursors just in general. I mean, both of those were new things back in 2012, 2013. They weren't completely new because you had Brenner who had been publishing, you had other researchers that had been publishing, and it was a very promising area. Just there was a lot of work that still needed to be done. So the best way to sort of, I think, advance the science was if we were going to do it on our own, it would have been too limiting. So meaning we could have chosen that path and not done any of this type of research. But I think that nicotinamide riboside and probably NAD precursors as a whole might not be where they are today if we hadn't done that, because you just had this explosive interest in groups, researchers all over the world that wanted to do work on this, and us being willing to be able to share the material under the CERP program, accelerated, the amount of research out there. And it was the first thing we needed was preclinical work. We needed a lot of preclinical work to show that the stuff was not only safe, but effective in animal studies. In order to get the stuff into human studies, you need to have that body of preclinical data to even justify the interest in clinical studies. And that's exactly, by the way, you've been around long enough to see that progression, but it's the early preclinical studies and the success of the early preclinical studies it did exactly what it was supposed to. And it seeded that going, this was great. Now we want to go and fund a human trial based on the what we saw coming out of that preclinical data. And that happened a lot. And watching that happen, look, I mean, that was the intention, right? But I mean, it's not often that, all these plans come together the way that you thought that they were going to come together, and watching it actually unfold and watch that happen in real time in CERP was pretty amazing, actually.
Yeah, definitely an amazing program, and seeing that evolution and continuing. So with those clinical studies that kind of started initially just in terms of safety, and now we're starting to look at various indications and efficacy, and just imagine 10 years from now where the program is going to be.
Yeah, for sure.
And Frank, too, just sort of jumping, on with what you were just mentioning too about the growth of the research. Can you speak a little bit more to the importance of leveraging these, industry-leading third-party investigators and sort of what that means for this, research as a whole and in the industry?
Well, it's in my opinion, it's much better if the research is done by an independent researcher at a university rather than being a sponsored funded study from a company. I mean, there's sort of three layers. We could engage a CRO and do our own work and pay for everything and do everything on our own. We could do sponsored university research where we're paying the researcher to do work. That to me is like one step in between. And then there's the other side, which is a university researcher is not getting paid by us at all, who's designing and doing work based on their areas of interest, not necessarily 100% always aligned with exactly what we might be interested in. And we're sitting there going, yes, we'll support you by giving you the material that you need to conduct the study, but we're not doing anything else other than that. It's way more credible when you get a study that's published where there's no perceived conflict from the company and the fact that we had funded it. And I think we've been extraordinarily lucky in getting the sheer amount of research that's been done on work that we haven't had to pay for.
Right.
And having dealt with this for years in the space and developing ingredients in the space and dealing with other customers like us in the space, most of the time the university will usually come back and go, this is really interesting. We would like to do some work on your substance, but you guys are going to have to pay for half the study.
Right.
That is the most common thing. And then if you're not unwilling to do it, most of the time the researcher is just going to walk away and not do it. And we haven't seen that here.
Yeah.
I mean, we haven't had any. I would say that hasn't been a major problem. We've had some that, of course, have asked for us to help sponsor studies, like everybody else, right? But the sheer amount of studies that we've had where they never even asked for us to do that, or maybe they just asked a little bit and we said we can't do that, and then they just said, "Don't worry about it. We'll take care of it. We'll go do it on our own."
Well, I think it's a testament to how promising nicotinamide riboside Niagen is as well.
Correct.
I mean, not just for consumers, but industry leading, incredible researchers, investigators, doctors clearly are seeing that. And I think it's a testament to, them sort of taking the ingredient and conducting these studies on their own.
Right. Exactly. I think that says a lot.
Yeah.
Not only that's the case, but also just the sheer number of them that we've had, which is pretty impressive.
Absolutely. And sort of closing it out, Frank, can you speak a little bit more to the importance of this research for consumers worldwide and what, the potential this research has to unlock in the healthy aging landscape and industry?
I mean, it's critical for consumers, in my opinion, and that the reason that is because, look, consumers should demand clinical evidence to support the ingredients or the products that the ingredients that are contained in the products that they have actually work the way that they're supposed to. And I mean, generally we work in an industry where sometimes that is pretty thin. There's a lot more story than there is substance to it. And to me, that's a problem. I mean, it's a fixable problem. I mean, to me, it's not a problem for companies that choose to launch early because it's so promising that they want to launch into the market. We did that, right? But we also made sure that we were driving a sort of preclinical and clinical program to validate that, hey, there's something here, and there's going to be published data that consumers might not necessarily understand or have the ability to read all the peer-reviewed research on nicotinamide riboside or any other NAD precursor for that matter. But the bottom line is that there should be comfort in the fact that there's been a considerable amount of research validating that the clinical benefits of what they're consuming. And I think that's table stakes for a company like us from a science-driven organization should, without a doubt, have a plan to do that. If you can't find somebody, researchers under a CERP program to be able to do it, then you're probably going to have to bear most of the weight in doing it on your own. I just think it's more credible to do it through an organized program like we developed with CERP, which I think has been a tremendous success.
Absolutely.
Well, thank you, Frank, so much for this wonderful interview. We appreciate your time. We appreciate that you are our chairman and that we will continue to lead and advance the science of NAD in the future. Thank you.
Thanks. Glad I could help out.
Thank you.
Thank you.